Story 1. When someone never apologizes, even for small things, it seems minor at first. However, over time, it shows they might not take accountability or be open to real communication. Story 2. Pay attention to how they treat others. You may be the only person they do not ignore and treat with respect. You are their special someone for now. As soon as you are no longer special, they will ignore you the same way they do everyone else, but they will expect you to continue treating them well. Story 3. Making assumptions about how you feel and accepting them as fact without actually talking to you is like being in a relationship with someone who creates your narrative and cannot have difficult conversations. Spoiler alert, they are usually wrong about what they assume. Story 4. When you bring something up to them and they say, "Oh, but you do this," you become the reason for every negative thing they do. They do negative things but do not bring them up until you bring up theirs. Story 5. Belittling your or their hobbies is harmful. Hobbies are the core activities that define a person. Often, they are what makes someone unique. Therefore, belittling something you are passionate about is a red flag. Story 6. I cannot say most people do not notice because I do not know most people, but for me, it was a lack of initiative. That became a significant issue because I could not rely on them to be there for me in emotional times of need. Yet they fully expected me to be there for them always. It turns out half of the items listed at the moment are true for my ex. Story 7. The lack of conflict in a relationship, such as "we never fight," could either indicate excellent communication skills or that someone, perhaps both people in the relationship, are not being honest about how they feel. Conflict is inevitable in a relationship. The key is finding healthy ways of dealing with it. Story 8. When you share things in confidence and they turn around and use it against you during a conflict. Story 9. Lack of affection and quality time, but willingness to take you out for planned activities, making you more of a +1. Emotionally disconnected with surface-level conversations. Story 10. One person always accommodates the other, which leads to a perceived absence of conflict. In reality, the partner doing the accommodating likely is not having their needs met, while the partner who is always getting their way is likely to be perfectly happy with the situation. Story 11. I like a lot here: accountability and fake apologies. My last relationship was far from perfect, and we tried to save it. It took me far too long to realize that the biggest issue I faced was my partner not taking accountability and often twisting scenarios to make me the villain. For example, "I'm sorry I made you feel like that, but do you not understand how you make me feel when you tell me something I did upset you? If you notice this, leave." It doesn't get any better and leads to resentment very quickly once you realize the pattern. Story 12. Not asking about you. Not asking a simple question like "how are you doing?" or checking in if you mention being sick or hurt. Story 13. This is a strange situation involving someone who was too nice. My ex went out of his way when we first started dating to show me how kind he was by over-tipping, giving cash to homeless people, and helping me assemble new furniture. Over time, all of that faded, and I realized it was just an act to attract girls and seem likable. He was actually a covert narcissist. Story 14. Schrodinger's comedian. Everything is a serious piece of commentary they truly believe until you talk to them about it, and then it is just a joke. Story 15. Creating public inconveniences such as not cleaning the table after eating at a cafe and not returning the shopping cart after grocery shopping. Story 16. You feel like you are constantly walking on eggshells, not because they explode in anger, but because they shut down, deflect, or subtly guilt-trip you when you express needs or concerns. Story 17. I had an ex who did not like my cat and would call him mean names. He said he was just joking when I told him I did not like it. Everything else was fine at the start, so I ignored it even though it bothered me. However, it was not long before he started being mean to me too. Story 18. They are never happy for anyone, no matter what it is. They always put down their friends' accomplishments and relationships. Story 19. Somebody who does not try to get to know your friends. Somebody who is impatient. They will only get progressively worse over time and will start snapping at you. Somebody who walks in front of you when you are together. Story 20. Someone who is still ruled by their parents' influence. I have met several grown men who simply would not stand up for me or themselves because they did not want to tell their mother or father no. This will not work if you want a family or life of your own someday. These people will allow their parents to abuse and control them and even you. Story 21. Commenting on or belittling the other's behavior. I have seen it many times. One partner orders food at a restaurant and the other mocks how much or what they order. This is usually followed by comments like someone is hungry, or she already has a few kilos too much but enjoys food a lot. Story 22. When people see themselves as victims repeatedly in stories from their past, it may indicate a pattern. Some individuals experience bad luck and are taken advantage of. However, more commonly, those who frame situations this way are unable to take accountability for their actions. Story 23. When they keep reminding you of your mistakes, that is, you did something wrong, and every time the consequences are mentioned, they make sure to add whose fault it was. Story 24. They keep a mental scoreboard. You might notice comments like, "Oh, remember that time I did that for you? I guess that doesn't matter now." Or, "Well, I did help you last week, so you owe me." It doesn't seem like a big deal until every favor feels transactional. You end up feeling guilty anytime you ask for something, and your relationship starts to feel like a business deal instead of a partnership. Story 25. If someone says no to anything, pressuring them by saying, "Come on, you'll love it, it'll be so fun," and repeatedly asking or recruiting others to change the person's mind, is pushing a boundary they have set. It does not matter how kindly it is done. Anytime this has happened in a relationship, that person later starts picking away at other boundaries because I allowed it by lowering my boundaries to cave to social pressure. If I did not give in, there are usually boundary pushes with constant digs about having a stick up my ass. There is not. No just means no. Story 26. Lying. Everybody lies sometimes, but it is not that. When you confront a lie or any factual mistakes they made, if they go completely silent or try to manipulate you, be aware. Story 27. Never being able to spend more than a day at home together. If you cannot spend 2 or more days at home with your partner, I think it indicates a bigger issue. Story 28. I married a kind man. As soon as we returned from our honeymoon, I started noticing little thoughtless things. I was making dinner and asked him if he minded setting the table. He set a place for himself. Every day something like that would happen, and the issues grew over time. 15 years of it resulted in a divorce caused by 1,000 little cuts. Story 29. You are expected to do a lot more for them than they do for you, regardless of what you are doing. I dated someone who constantly asked me to do small things for her. It started with asking me to get something from another room even though she was not busy herself while I was. It escalated to whenever I tried to study, she would stop me every 5 minutes to do things for her without any reason she could not do them herself. This was entitled controlling behavior. One of my friends pointed it out to me later. I thought I was crazy for complaining, but it was obvious even to other people. Story 30. More like a slow burn of a red flag when your partner picks up your same hobbies and interests. First, it seems fun to share things you enjoy together. However, it has happened to me twice where it felt like my partner lost themselves and was literally just turning into me. Everything we talked about was things I did or enjoyed, which they now did too, and they completely stopped their individual hobbies and interests. Story 31. Getting jealous or insecure when you do things you enjoy or talk to others. Also, thinking they have access to your phone or money, or are entitled to not treat you like your own individual person. Story 32. When they do not hear you. When you explain exactly what is wrong or why you are upset and they tell you that you are only upset because they are sad or angry or some other negative emotion. No, I am not mad that you are upset. I am angry at how you are treating me because you are upset. Story 33. Something I have noticed is how men treat their mothers. A man who is not afraid to treat his mother poorly is not afraid to treat you poorly as well. Story 34. If he goes out of his way to do things for anyone except his own girlfriend, it might seem like he is a good person because he treats his friends, family, and even strangers well. However, you may realize that he is a covert narcissist who needs validation from others to be seen as a good person. As his girlfriend, You cannot say he is treating you poorly because other people do not experience the same horrible treatment you do. Story 35. Resentment does not matter if it is dressed up as humor. It is the ultimate killer of relationships, often only noticed when things have really gone down the drain. Sometimes couples refuse to see it even when a counselor tells them directly about it. Story 36. When they change small, seemingly insignificant details of an incident, conversation, or memory, it is the beginning of minor psychological manipulation. Story 37. Lack of respect in home life. Sloppy, lazy, selfish behavior, and not contributing, but putting on a good show in public. Story 38. Not necessarily silent, but many people view dating and relationships as if they are a war, even if they do not realize it. They weaponize emotions and intimate conversations when it benefits them in the moment and become very defensive, almost to a fault, in order to protect their ego. This is surprising because an ego is hardly worth protecting, yet people repeatedly prioritize it and damage their relationships if their ego seems threatened. Story 39. Materialistic behavior usually comes with bad spending habits which lead to a lot of debt. So, if your relationship is long-term, watch out. Story 40. The classic, "I'm sorry, but you also did," followed by telling you what you did wrong to soften their responsibility. Story 41. Contempt. When one person starts mocking or belittling the other, or choosing to disbelieve them, reading into their actions based on assumption, or acting like they are smarter or better, it drains all the respect from the relationship. Over time, that behavior shuts down trust, curiosity, and any real chance to stay close. It does not even have to be big. Something as simple as not giving the other the benefit of the doubt over small mistakes will quietly erode the relationship over time. Story 42. No manners. They do not say thank you to people who go out of their way to do small kind things, such as moving aside in public spaces, holding open the door, or letting them go ahead in a line. They do not say please when they ask for something. Costs nothing to be polite. Story 43. How people react when they don't get their way. It's easy for everything to be nice in a relationship in the beginning because you're in the honeymoon phase and the other person is your number one priority all the time. But as relationships go on and life gets in the way, things come up. Seeing early on how someone copes with others saying no or things not going their way is important. I saw this with my ex but ignored it early on. After 2 years and some tough general circumstances in life for us, she basically turned on me. Story 44. Saying sorry for their actions without acknowledging the emotional impact and following through is insufficient. Acknowledging the wrong is just the first step. The ability to repair is the most important step. The little resentment that builds over time kills relationships. Story 45. From my experience, apologizing and then going right back to doing the same thing repeatedly is ineffective. Also, giving one-word responses when you are trying to tell someone something important or heartbreaking is unhelpful. If you can guess what they are going to say, they will never change. Story 46. I'll never leave you sounds like an endearing sentiment, showing devotion and the desire to always work things out no matter what. It really means, I will push you past sanity and break every agreement we make until I can make you leave me because I lack the backbone to leave you myself. And I don't want our friends to think I am the bad person. If we break up, it was your fault for ending things because I will never do it. Story 47. When things generally feel off and you cannot put your finger on why. When your partner does something hurtful and somehow you end up apologizing to them, then wondering how that happened. When you believe you are the bad person but do not understand what you did wrong. When you are constantly walking on eggshells. When you start questioning your own sanity and no longer know what is up or down, or who you are anymore. When it feels like death by 1,000 paper cuts. No one thing seems that dramatic, but you notice it is a pattern of behavior, not isolated incidents. When you almost start wishing they would do something undeniably wrong like hitting you or cheating, because at least then you would know for sure that things are as bad as they feel. Then you feel guilty for how wrong that is. In hindsight, all of these are huge red flags. But when you are in the depths of emotional abuse, you lose sight of what is normal. Story 48. When they say, you made me do that, to justify their negative actions, as if they were not a bad person but you pushed them to be one. Story 49. If they speak negatively about their friends or family, it is common to vent superficially about those closest to you. However, if they repeatedly criticize core traits of their loved ones or share their secrets with you, there is a good chance that person will also speak negatively about you and reveal your private matters. My ex used to tell me, without being asked, all the drama and scandals of his friend group. It took me a while to realize that he is a disloyal person who does not consider anyone's feelings as long as he gets attention. Story 50. Babe, relax. I just like every picture that is on my feed, combined with an Instagram and TikTok suggested page that looks like a constant stream of soft porn. Story 51. When a man wants to buy you clothes, saying, I'd like you in this. I have seen this happen to a few friends. There is nothing inherently wrong with buying clothes for your partner, of course. It's all in how you do it. If you go shopping with her, support her choices, and then buy the things she likes, that is great. If he says, I bought you this because I like you in this, run. You are not a Barbie doll for him to dress up. Always a red flag. Story 52. Passivity. My son had a girlfriend like that. Sweet and likable. But, dear God, she had zero ambition. She earned her degree in my career field. She asked for my help getting her internships. I set up 2 separate contacts and she never called. She moved in with my son and did pet sitting but never found a job that actually earned reliable money. While she was home most of the day, she never did anything but watch television. So my son would come home to a trashed house and nothing done. I mean, it's one thing if you're off working. It's another thing entirely if you're doing nothing at all. Plus, because she was bored, she started to drink. My son, a good kid, finally tossed her out when she promised to change and then, 3 days later, spent the entire day at a bar. You don't have to be some type A hard-charging person. That's not it. But you have to have the basic motivation to get off the sofa and do something, to contribute to the relationship in meaningful ways, rather than just absorb what's handed to you. Story 53. Instead of being happy about good news happening to someone they know, they try to find the negative side or compete with them. They turn a statement of fact into slights against themselves. For example, if you say, I'm cold, they hear, it's your fault for turning the thermostat down. They always try to assign blame instead of finding solutions. Story 54. Saying they want to talk but do not talk and expect you to know what is going wrong in the relationship. Story 55. They are okay with you doing everything and will always say yes to an offer of any help, paying for them, gifts, and so on without any resistance or offering anything in return. Story 56. You cannot argue with an immature or stubborn person. Their ability to understand your point of view does not exist. You will waste time and energy on someone who does not want to meet you halfway. Story 57. When you realize you are in a relationship where you say, I am proud of this, and they say, cool, and that is the best reaction you ever got. Story 58. They unquestioningly copy their parents' behaviors and views even when it is objectively causing them harm. Story 59. My ex made jokes about hitting me, not like a smack on the butt, but giving me the backhand. I told him I didn't like those jokes very much, and he stopped for a while but not for long. We were together 6 years. He never did hit me or harm me in any way, but I found those jokes in horrible taste, especially when I found out from my older brother and told him that my dad used to hit my mom. I was too young to know and have not been around my father since I was 2. But I almost felt a little sick when my ex would make those jokes. Story 60. Machiavellianism. I always pay attention to how people treat others when they do not need anything from them versus when they do. Story 61. Lack of autonomy in chores. After 6 years with my partner, I am trying to rewrite this for both of us, and it is painful. His teenage children learn faster than he does. Story 62. I once saw a video of a girl laughing because her boyfriend spilled her expensive shampoo and filled the bottle with water so she would not notice. She thought it was cute, and all the comments were laughing too. It was a small problem. He only had to apologize and buy her a new one, but instead he chose to cover it up and trick her. If he acts like that over something small, imagine when it is something serious, he will be a total jerk. Little lies and sneaky moves like that are major red flags. Story 63. A true silent red flag is using mental illness as a cover to avoid communication. I know this is hard for people to hear, but it is 100% used as an excuse to avoid difficult conversations and talking about feelings with a willing partner. People suffering from anxiety and depression still have the capability to talk about what is going on. Story 64. Anything turns into silence. I love you, silence. Are you okay? Silence. Starts small at first, but it will get worse. They are battling something and not telling. They need help. Story 65. This is a common situation, but pay attention to what they talk to you about. If they are always talking about a certain ex-partner or how they are always the victim, then 99.9% of the time it is never going to be something good. Story 66. Constantly seeking validation from other men. She tells me her behavior is not flirty, that it is just her personality. Story 67. Inability to make even small decisions can be challenging. Questions like, what movie do you want to watch? Where do you want to eat? And what day or time do you want to meet? Are acceptable the first few times. However, if that does not change to statements like, let's watch X, I'm really craving Y, or I'm free Wednesday afternoon, what about you? Then you will be the driving force of the relationship until you burn out. Story 68. When the primary importance in the relationship belongs to one person and not both, it feels like the relationship exists solely to fulfill their pleasures and needs, and you are expected to do so. When this happened to me, it was a gradual process. Eventually, I realized that I was being excluded from the relationship itself. Story 69. Listening to relationship advice given on Reddit. By the time you find out, it is already too late for your relationship. Story 70. When people do not complain, it is not because they have no complaints, but because they do not express them. An inability to communicate those needs leads to a situation where you hear, "We need to talk," and they are out of your life before you realize it. Story 71. Being unwilling to try to see things from another person's perspective. Being unwilling to change communication style to better suit the needs of the partner. For example, I am structured and cannot deal well with unstructured or vague requests. Just tell me what you expect, what to do, and when. Story 72. I'm seeing a lot of red flags that really are not silent, but this could just be my perspective. One that I believe is silent would be overly agreeable or liking everything. For example, you're on your first date and getting to know each other through conversation. The date seems to like every hobby, every sport, every interest that you express during these conversations. They even agree with your views on different topics like favorite classes in school, politics, music, science theory, or whatever. A lot of people would see this and think, wow, I finally found someone who likes the same things as I do and shares the same opinions. To me, this is a red flag that will not present itself until years down the road. This person could be totally honest. However, it is also, and probably more so, likely that they are not, and they are just going along with you because the right amount of things line up, you get along well, and the physical attraction is there. In this scenario, the date is essentially silencing their opinions, interests, and hobbies in order to appease and appeal to you. Over time, this will cause a lot of inner turmoil that will come out and damage the relationship. Story 73. My ex was very nice and went out of his way to be friendly to make sure everyone liked him, including his friends and family. He would attend events out of obligation, even when he did not want to go. He would talk negatively about his friends and siblings to me, but never spoke up to their faces. It turns out he maintained a fake front at all times except with me. His kindness to everyone else confused me, so I let things slide. However, he was narcissistic and wanted everyone to like him while treating me poorly. I found out this weekend that most of my family saw through it and did not like him. Story 74. How they treat their family. I had a boyfriend for a short time, and whenever I went over to his house, he would scream at his little brother and sister simply for being around us. And I don't mean in the normal sibling way. He would literally act like a whole different person around his family, and it was in the worst way. It was a huge turn-off for me since I am very family-oriented. Also, he did treat me horribly. I wish I had left him as soon as I saw how he treated his family. Story 75. Telling you how you feel. Are you upset or angry right now? No. Yes, you are. I can tell. Like what? Story 76. Double standard and hypocrisy. Once, we were eating on his bed because he didn't have a dinner table or coffee table. I accidentally knocked a pizza crust off my plate, and he freaked out thinking I was going to stain his bedding. It did not make any mess. I picked it up right away and everything was fine. Not even 2 minutes later, a big drip of pizza sauce fell from the slice he was eating and stained his bedding, but he had no reaction. It was acceptable when he did it, but he would always freak out about the smallest things I did wrong, even when he did the same things. This happened frequently throughout the relationship. Story 77. Pay attention to how they handle their phone around you. Privacy screens are not a deal breaker, but they personally tell me you are hiding something you do not want anyone to see. Could be anything, not always the worst. Story 78. Pay attention to how they talk about their friends. If you often hear them speaking negatively about their friends, it can mean one of two things. They are surrounded by unpleasant people, which probably means they are unpleasant themselves. If he or she talks negatively about good people, it means they will do the same about you sooner or later. In both cases, it is a red flag. Story 79. Showering you with gifts, favors, and love one day, then acting emotionally immature, mean, or petty the next. Abusers often balance these behaviors, making it confusing to recognize their abusive actions. Once you get fed up, their nice side appears, making you think that deep down they mean well or love you. But no. Emotionally mature people take accountability and communicate respectfully. Otherwise, showering you with dopamine is just a smokescreen to conceal abusive behavior. Story 80. A lingering sense of detachment or coldness. Many people tend to brush it off as, well, I am not a very emotional person. But emotion is a key ingredient in any relationship. Story 81. When they keep presenting their point of view of an event as the correct one, you might initially give them the benefit of the doubt. Over time, the narrative becomes that they remember better than you, making you question your reality. Story 82. Lack of empathy is the best predictor of long-term relationship failure. If you observe a lack of empathy before becoming legally partnered, spend time carefully considering whether this is a person you want to commit to. Being attractive, wealthy, funny, or giving good vibes is less important than the ability to demonstrate empathy toward you and others. Story 83. If everything seems good but something feels off and you cannot put your finger on it, trust your intuition. People can be completely different when out of your sight. If there is not a light or spark in their eyes, their words may not be truthful. Story 84. Treating waiters badly is a common silent red flag. Not keeping one's word to children is less common but an even more stealthy red flag. Story 85. When you feel like you have to prepare yourself before talking to them, sure, everyone has bad days, but if you are constantly walking on eggshells, that is a sign. Quiet one, but it adds up. Story 86. A silent red flag. My sister's ex was never comfortable when he visited my home. He would say it was too noisy even though there was nobody around. My parents and us kids had left to other rooms and left them by themselves. No one was making any sounds. It was extremely quiet. They ended up getting married. Later, we found out he had been hiding an addiction. Story 87. I was in a relationship where the man could never see my point of view. I would explain the reason or feeling behind an action, and he always turned the conversation to his point of view and feelings. He never once acknowledged mine, even after I listened to his. Story 88. Being with someone who constantly makes you doubt yourself, especially about things you are passionate about or knowledgeable in, is difficult. Each little comment made to undermine you hurts so much, but we keep excusing it. Story 89. When they say, nobody will ever love you as much as I do. When they complain about buying something inexpensive as a nice gesture. My ex refused to buy me a $10 New York Jets koozie as a souvenir because he was a Pittsburgh Steelers fan, even though I spent over $300 on tickets to the Jets versus Steelers game we attended. When they criticize the things you and your friends do for fun and act like they and their friends are superior for having different interests. Story 90. One thing I am noticing from these comments is that some people behave poorly. As someone who has never been in a relationship but cannot imagine acting like this, I just have to wonder how these people enter into relationships. Story 91. Not wanting to put the shopping cart in its place, littering, not tipping well, not cleaning up after themselves in public places, basically not doing their part to be a good member of society. Story 92. When they do not acknowledge or reply to some things you say in regular conversations, it slowly devalues you and gives their words more weight and power in the relationship. Story 93. Being very kind sounds great until they cannot stand up for you or themselves when necessary. They will let anyone take advantage of them and will expect you to be treated the same way, as long as it maintains peace. Story 94. Being bad with money does not mean falling behind due to an unexpected bill or issue. It refers to spending money recklessly, having a lot of debt, hiding that debt, asking for money, and having money for leisure but not for basic needs or responsibilities. I understand that poor financial habits often stem from a lack of education. However, if this continues as a person ages and harms others, it can be very harmful. Story 95. Not allowing you to have alone time without explanation, even when it is framed as just wanting to be with you or talk to you all the time, should cause concern. Story 96. When someone is so afraid of conflict that they never say anything, never object, and never discuss anything that might be difficult or unpleasant. Story 97. It is normal to not have the same hobbies. It is a different matter to not want to try each other's hobbies when one person has been making an effort. Story 98. When he makes a mistake, he ignores it and does not apologize. Instead, he tries to change the atmosphere between you by joking without mentioning his mistake. When you ask him to apologize or discuss what happened, he gets angry. I also think that when you give your opinion, he makes fun of it as if he is telling a joke. Sometimes he says, "I know better than you." When he does something that hurts you or violates your boundaries, instead of taking responsibility, he tells you, "I did this for your own good," or "You and I are one." This is a soft trap. Story 99. It is not fine, and I am going to do something drastic after not talking to anybody about it. Story 100. What's sad to me is seeing all the silent red flags my ex and I both had. A lot of it came from childhood trauma and toxic childhood home dynamics. We both wanted a family and to make it work so badly. We kept thinking we had such a great relationship. The reality was that we met so young, unhealed, and had no self-awareness of who we really were or what we truly needed from a partner, much less the idea of what a healthy way to treat someone was. We still love each other as friends and co-parents and are much more healed now apart than together. New partners give us a chance to be the people we have worked hard to become. We all work as a village to break generational cycles that it took my ex and me going through 7 years of couples therapy and our entire 20s into late 30s to see, name, and get help with. Even if you love someone, pay attention to the silent red flags and trust them. Story 101. They always check your phone or keep it for long periods, answer it for you, or use it without letting you see theirs at all. Last but not least, and the one my last ex used to do almost every day, which I hate more than anything and wish I never had to deal with, is that they cheat on you every day but are very abusive when accusing you of being unfaithful. They are untrustworthy of you, even though you are literally only in their room all day and do not leave. Story 102. They are never present even when they are with you. There is always something more important. It is always your responsibility to work on the relationship, and that becomes tiring. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.